Hi, my name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. Now today, what we're going to be doing is giving you an update on what is going on in the largest real estate market in South Central Alaska, which is Anchorage. We're going to be looking at the residential, the condo, and the multi-unit market, and just looking and seeing how everything is shaking out in the past month, specifically in Anchorage. So some of the findings are something that even I am paying pretty close attention to, so looking forward to jumping into that. Before we get started, do make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't done so already, to make sure you stay updated on what's going on in the market. And without further ado, let's go and jump into it. First thing that we need to look at here is just the total number of active properties that are on the market for the residential market. All year, you've seen we have been short on inventory. In the past month in November, the most recent month we have with all the data in, we're actually seeing obviously a pretty significant decline right there in inventory. So that's really kind of been the story of the market that we've seen so far for the residential. Not a lot of it, and it's pretty consistently been down for the entire year. The second thing I want to look at this month is just looking specifically at the number of properties that have actually sold in the residential market in Anchorage, because we've kind of looked at the inventory. Now let's take a look and see how many of those are actually selling. Even with the down inventory, we see over here a significant increase in the number of properties that are actually selling. For the past month in November for Anchorage, last year was about 173 homes. This past month, we're seeing it was actually about 225. So we are seeing an increase in the number of properties that are sold, even though we've seen a decrease in the total number of properties that are on the market. The next thing that we're going to look at is just the year to date for the properties that have actually sold in Anchorage. Now, what we see over here is we see there's actually been a 17% increase in the number of properties that have actually sold in Anchorage for the residential market. So that's doing pretty good. Over here, what we're starting to see is average sold price actually has gone up pretty significantly. It was about $373 year to date last year. Now it's about $398,000. So you're seeing a pretty good increase there on the average sold price. And obviously the days on market have been coming down quite a bit as well over here. So that's promising. That shows there's high demand, and it's being reflected in the days on market and the average sold price, which is going up at the same time. Let's go and switch gears a little bit and look at the condo market now. First off, we're going to look at the number of active properties that are on the market. Over here, last year we saw there was about 356 condos that were on the market. This past month, the total number of active condos that were on the market was about 299. So pretty significant compression of the amount of inventory that was available on the market. Next thing that we're going to look at is the number of properties that have actually sold for condos here in Anchorage. As you can see behind me, it has pretty consistently been above what the previous months were in the previous years. This over here shows us that the average last year that sold was actually about 67, and this year what we're seeing is it's actually closer to about 97. So you've seen a pretty significant uptick in the number of properties that have actually sold in Anchorage, the number of condos, I should say. Let's take a quick break from today's video. Did you know I am going to be starting a podcast in January of 2021? Well, you do now. The purpose of the podcast is we're going to be answering the questions for all of you who are thinking about answering the call and moving to Alaska. We're also going to be interviewing Alaskans. These are the authentic people who actually live up here and what their stories and experiences have been living on the last frontier. It's a project I've really been looking forward to a long time. It's not something that's quite as conducive on YouTube, so I'm looking forward to creating the podcast and just giving you a slice of what it's like living up here in Alaska from the people who actually live up here. Now, without further ado, let's go and jump back into today's video. Now, finally, let's look at the year to date for condos in Anchorage. Over here, what this is showing us is that year to date, we've actually sold about 11% more condos than what we did in the previous year. That's doing pretty good. As for the sales price, we're seeing that it's doing pretty good also. The one thing I would say about the average sold price, it's been about 207 was the average last year, 207,000. This year it's about 212,000. So not a significant shift in either direction, but that still is an increase in the average sold price. So not bad. Finally, let's look and see what's going on in the multi-family unit properties here in Anchorage. First off, we're seeing obviously a decrease in the amount of inventory. So that's going to be pretty similar from what we've seen for other properties here, property types in Anchorage. Over here, this shows us that there's about 190 properties that were on the market in the past month. Now it's about 178. So we do see a little bit of a downtick in the inventory that's available on the market for multi-unit family units. So not huge, but it is less inventory than what we've seen in the past. Next thing we would look at is just the total number of properties that have sold in this market compared to the previous years. This is actually going to be the 6th month in a row that we've seen an increase for the number of properties that have actually sold in these months. So less inventory, and we're seeing an uptick in the number of properties that have actually sold. Last year we sold about 25 homes, 25 multi-unit properties in Anchorage. This past month in November, it's actually sitting at 37 homes, or 37 properties that sold. So that's been a pretty consistent trend we've seen across the board really for the past 6 months since the pandemic took over. Next thing we're going to be checking out is the year to date for the multi-family market. Over here, what we're seeing is that there was actually about a 14% increase in the number of multi-unit families properties that have actually sold in this market during this period. So that's pretty good indication first off. Second off, let's take a look at the average sold price. Over here, this is actually showing us that the average sold price year to date has had a pretty good increase. It went from about $409,000 and actually did see an increase up to about $436,000. So that's a pretty good increase overall from what we've been seeing. However, this is one thing I would point out. We are seeing a fairly significant increase in the days on market for the multi-family properties. So, while not the entire story, that is something that we need to take into consideration as we are summarizing everything. Speaking of which, let's go and summarize the entire markets for what we're seeing right now. The residential market, inventory remains low, prices are high. If you're a seller, it's time to go. If you're a buyer, we need to be strategic what you're looking at. Looking at the condo market, inventory is low, yes. Average prices are going up, yes. It's not quite as strong as the residential market, but it's still doing pretty good overall. And for looking at the multifamily market, inventory's low, but more importantly, the number of properties that have actually sold is really the big takeaway for me. That has actually increased more so year over year for the past 6 months. So we do see people are getting into it, but they're not necessarily jumping into it with both feet like what we saw with the other properties. We still do see a little bit of a lag there and kind of a slowdown in the days on market for multifamily properties. So investors are taking advantage of the low interest rates, but not quite at the same voracious rate as we're seeing with the condo or the residential markets. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you didn't do so already, give this video a like, and also if you're ready to start looking for properties here in the Anchorage area, do make sure that you download my app. Details for that is going to be in the video up above, and I look forward to answering any further questions that you might have, and thank you for watching.